In this video, I'm going to talk about how to get your chickens to lay eggs after SHTF. Now, right now, you can go down to the feed store and get a layer ration, layer pellets or layer mash or crumbles or whatever, and feed them that, and that's got everything nutritionally that they need to be able to produce eggs. Now, after SHTF, you're not going to have a feed store that you can go down to and buy that. So what do you feed those chickens to get good egg production? For egg production, there are dozens and dozens of factors, but your main three factors are, first, number of hours of daylight. Now, in the current situation, even in winter, you can get your chickens to lay eggs by manipulating the amount of daylight they have. And by daylight, it doesn't have to be light from the sun, it just has to be light. So currently, you can put a light bulb in the area where your chickens are. The chickens are penned. If you can get some extra light into that pen and extend the hours of light they have, basically what you'd want to do is turn that light on a half hour before dark and leave it on until however long it needs to be, so that they've had 14 to 16 hours of light, with 16 hours being better than 14. Doing that will trigger, I don't know if it's a psychological thing or if it's related to the vitamin D that is gotten from sunlight. I'm not sure which one it is. But for some reason, one or the other, the additional sunlight is what triggers them to lay eggs in the spring. It's not the temperature. The temperature does play a small role in it, but the way it plays a role is a chicken is going to burn calories producing an egg. In cold weather, they are also going to burn calories in keeping their body temperature up, keeping themselves warm, so to speak. So if there's not enough calories to keep them warm and produce an egg that day, of course their body is going to go with survival first and expend the calories with keeping itself warm. So that could easily be overcome by being sure that they have plenty of calorie uptake. Again, there are lots of factors, but the most important factors nutritionally in egg production are protein, calcium, and the third being calories. You want to be sure that in their ration they have enough of those three things. If you are able to allow your chickens to free range, then Sustenance and Covering did a great video talking about caring for free range chickens. And there's really not a lot I can add to that video, so you should really check out his video, because this video is geared towards those who, for whatever reason, whether it be someone stealing your chickens or predators or whatever, if you have to keep your chickens penned for whatever reason, that's what I'm covering here. Now, I will add right off the bat that if you are going to pen your chickens, it's best for the chicken to give them the biggest pen that you can. Space and fencing materials will allow. Now, as far as the protein, calcium, and calories, we'll start with protein. Their total ration intake for egg production should be somewhere between 16 and 20% protein, with ideal being around 18%. Now, of course, you don't have a way to know the precise percentage of everything, but if you see to it that they get some things that are high protein, then that's going to help. Your high protein things are soybeans or cottonseed. That's also fairly high in protein. Now, if you don't have a way to get either of those, you can give a chicken meat. Now, of course, the first thing you're thinking is, well, I need the meat for myself. But what you can give them for meat are things like, for example, you kill a rabbit to eat. The insides of that rabbit, all those pieces that you don't want, you can give to those chickens, and those chickens will eat that meat. The intestines, the kidney, just about anything, any part of it that you don't want. The head even. They'll peck at it and peck at the eyes and what have you. Any animal, fish, whatever, bird even. And that's going to take care of your protein. Now, if those chickens are free range, they're going to get plenty of insects and what have you. So you probably won't have to worry about that much, but you might as well throw it to them anyway if you don't have anything else to do with it. they will eat it. Now, your next thing to cover is calcium. Now, everything they eat is going to have some protein in it and some calcium. But of course, they can only eat so much in a day, so you want to give them some things that are high in calcium. Some example of things that actually high in calcium would be bones. If you catch a fish, and whether you fillet it or you just cook it whole and pick the meat off the bones, either way, take those bones and take a hammer and smash it up and throw that to the chickens. Anything, a rabbit, if you kill a rabbit or you kill a deer, smash up those bones into pieces small enough that a chicken can eat them, throw them in there. Chickens will eat those bones and get the calcium from them. Another place they can get calcium is going to be from eggshells, because that's what the purpose of the calcium is to create the eggshell. An eggshell is almost 100% calcium. So when you break the egg, you don't eat the shell, so just throw the shell to the chickens. Now, I would recommend do not throw the shell so it still looks even vaguely like an egg, because doing that, you can get your chickens to develop the habit of eating eggs. So what you want to do is you want to crumble those shells up into little tiny pieces so it's no longer recognizable as being from an egg. Another option is limestone. If you've got limestone in your area, limestone is 80 to 90% calcium. And you can crush up that limestone. If it's tiny pieces of gravel, just throw it to them the way it is. If not, you can either powder or small enough in some way that limestone, they can eat it. And another option is going to be if you're in an area where you can get oysters or some kind of mussels from underwater, those shells are about 96% calcium. You can bust those shells apart into small pieces, throw them in there, and let the chickens eat those. Your ideal thing with those calcium items, because they will work their way into the soil and the soil will use them, is maybe have some kind of a bowl or something that you can throw those things in there and just keep some of that stuff in there all the time so the chickens can just come and peck out what they want. Their instincts will tell them how much of it to eat. So a couple of other things that are fairly high in calcium, but not nearly as high as these things I just said, but they do have more calcium than a lot of other things, are pretty much anything leafy. Grass, lettuce. If you have some lettuce that wilted or bugs got on your lettuce and it's just you don't want to eat it. Cabbage has a fair amount of calcium, though not as much as lettuce or grass. One of the higher things in calcium are legumes. Some examples of legumes are alfalfa or clover. Both of those have a good strong amount of calcium in them. If your chicken pen is big enough so that your chickens aren't keeping the grass killed in it, you could actually just sow a mixture of grass and some clover seed and some alfalfa seed in there and get those things growing, and that's going to help you out. In nature, they'll find little pieces of gravel here and there, and they'll find maybe a dead animal here and there so they can peck at the bones. But for the most part, in nature, they get their calcium from grasses and legumes, leaves. That's another option. One last option that I'm going to mention, it's fairly high in calcium. That would be if you have an area where you can get crabs, if not, or maybe where you can get crawdads, crayfish, crawfish, whatever you happen to call it in your area. The shells of those have a lot of calcium in them. So that's another option. And then that brings us to calories. First thing I'm going to mention is going to be molasses. And the reason I'm going to mention that first is molasses is high in calories, obviously, because there's so much sugar in it, but it is also fairly high in calcium. So if you could mix a little bit of molasses into what you're feeding those chickens, that would help. Of course, you're probably going to want to keep all of the molasses you can for your own use. Anything that's high in protein can be converted to calories. So anything that's high in protein can also help to give a calorie boost. And then finally, things that are high in carbohydrates have a lot of calories. That's going to be your grains, whether it be wheat, corn. Oats are a little less so than with corn. Corn is actually your highest calorie thing that comes to my mind right away that you would normally feed to chickens. Another option is table scraps. You can feed chickens your table scraps. Another option is milk. If you have some milk that's it's starting to spoil a little, say for example you're keeping a goat or a cow for milking and the milk's starting to spoil a little bit and you don't want to eat it yourself, you can pour that into a bowl and let the chickens eat that. And that's going to actually have a fair amount of protein, calories, and calcium in it. I think I've covered everything. Those are some things that not all of them would be available to you, but gives you some ideas, get your mind cranking in the right direction. Because I know a lot of people are planning to keep chickens after SHTF. And of course, the first thing is those chickens aren't much good to you if you don't know how to get them to lay eggs. So thanks for watching. Please rate, subscribe, and comment.